Welcome to Wild Worcestershire, the podcast from Worcestershire Wildlife Trust. Each episode will explore the wild corners of our county. From ancient woodlands to whispering wetlands, along the way we'll meet the people working to protect these places and uncover the hidden lives of the wildlife that calls them home. This is a space for stories, for connection and for celebrating nature right on our doorstep. So come with us and discover the wild side of Worcestershire. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. You find me on top of Fort Royal Hill, and either side of me are two English Civil War cannons looking out over the city. It's a beautiful day today. The sun is shining, there's blue sky, and there's a little bit of a breeze. A lot of the trees are now dropping their leaves. Just over to my right is the cathedral in all its splendour, and out below me is the A44 road travelling through the middle of the city, a major trunk road. And all about me is a built environment. There are houses and buildings everywhere. You can see out to the Malverns and you can see out beyond the city limits to the countryside, but that's sort of hidden behind a wall of brick and tarmac and concrete. And it got me thinking about urban conservation and what we can do to encourage the wildlife from the outside into our cities. And that's why I decided to start the day today here up on Fort Royal Hill. It's a fabulous little bit of green space. It's a historical space, if you like. Parks and things generally were introduced by the Victorians during the Industrial Revolution, because they became acutely aware of the fact that people needed to find places, green spaces, to exercise. They realised it was good for mental health. And they put green parks and spaces and gardens into their urban environments. What they didn't realise is that they were also helping nature at the same time. Now I've just stood here actually just looking down. There's a squirrel just below me, and he's busily gathering his acorns ready for the winter. And it is quite a nippy day actually. It's only about 5 degrees today, and there are quite a few leaves falling. I've got a lime tree to one side, there's an oak in front of me, and there's also a maple to the side. And I've just had a little bit of fun chasing the falling leaves, trying to catch a leaf before it touches the ground as it falls from the tree. It's not as easy as it sounds, and it's great exercise. So I've started the day with a bit of a bounce. And if you don't know by now, you're listening to the Wild Worcestershire podcast, and I'm your host, Lee Robinson. So today I'm going to take you for a little wander. We're going to start here in the park. I'm going to head out and I'm going to explore a natural corridor that snakes its way through the middle of the city, and that's the riverside path over by the River Severn. I'm going to be talking to Julie Granger, and I'll also be heading to the Heart of Worcestershire College, where I'm going to be looking at an urban garden that has been put together by some 40 students. And then to the end of the day, I'm going to be working from home. I'm going to have a little wander around my own garden, which I've been working very hard to turn into a nice green space for wildlife. And I'm very fortunate because I've got hedgehogs and slow worms and all sorts of wildlife that likes to come and visit my garden. So I'm particularly pleased with it, and that's where we'll finish today's journey. So come with me and let's have a little wander through the urban landscape and find out more about urban conservation. But first, let's go over and have a chat with Julie Granger about urban conservation.
Good morning, Lee. My name's Julie Granger and I work for Worcestershire Wildlife Trust as the project manager for a community project called Neighbourhoods Nurturing Nature. which actually it does exactly what it says in the title. We want to support communities to take action for nature, and we have funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund that has allowed us to do this. We have 3 years and 3 staff to work on this project. So there's myself, Julie, leading the team. I previously worked on the Monkwood and Green Farm project, which you may have heard about last podcast. And I'm supported by Conor McGoldrick and Anna Joseph. The 3 of us are working closely with partners in communities to try and change local green spaces by providing advice, support, experience and a bit of enthusiasm from trusted organisations. By providing opportunities to be part of improving local spaces for wildlife, we're hoping that residents will also benefit from the natural world on their doorstep rather than going out to reserves, which of course usually you'll need a car to be able to do that. We can advise on planning and mapping an area. We can help with the hard physical graft if you need it. We can support groups or individuals in raising awareness, running walks and talks, which may inspire other people to join your group. And together, hopefully, we'll create a lasting legacy and heritage for areas. We're working from the Salwarpe up to the Severn in places such as Kempsey, Worcester, Vernal Heath, Droitwich, and right the way up to Wychbold. So we're here to support community groups to make changes to local land. That includes orchards, meadow creation. We work with schools and colleges on allotments and small gardens. We attend events to promote wildlife. And that's really what we're all about.
Okay. So, really, I mean, it's kind of, I think the term networking is used, so it is about developing connectivity.
Yeah.
Within the urban landscape as well as the more rural landscapes. Yeah. And at Green Farm, Don was sort of talking about connectivity in the rural aspect. So, sort of thinking about that a little bit. So, what does urban wildlife conservation actually mean in practice, and why is it so important for towns and cities?
Well, as we kind of touched on, reserves are great places for wildlife. They're reserved for wildlife. But if you can't access them because you don't have a car or you physically can't get that far, then it's just so important to have wildlife on your doorstep. So this project is about using green spaces in towns and cities that everyone can get to. So it's completely inclusive. We would like to make spaces better for wildlife, but also for people. So if we can encourage people to leave areas to go wild or plant a few trees, a few flowers, it doesn't have to be massive, but within those spaces that we've all seen in towns and cities, we can improve them to make them better for our biodiversity for wildlife.
Right, okay. So, just sort of putting things into context a little bit. One of the projects that I recently visited was the Heart of Worcestershire College and their garden.
Yeah.
Could you just tell me a little bit more about that?
So Heart of Worcester College, for those of you who may not know, is literally in the middle of the city. It's in the busiest, most upbuilt area, and the students in the SEN group had been given an area to make into a garden. It was mostly slabs, to be honest, with a very small amount of soil with some trees. So we used that space to create a kind of a little haven in the middle of the city for wildlife. It's like a stopping off point. It's not massive, but in there they have trees, they have shrubs, they have herbs, they have flowers, they have deadwood. They've got a little teeny tiny pond, but all of those spaces mean that insects and small mammals, birds in particular, can stop off in that garden, have a little break, perhaps take some of the pollen from the flowers, some of the bird food that's been put out, have a rest in the tree, and then they can carry on to the next green space, which there are green spaces in Worcester. And what we need to do with places like Heart of Worcester is try and connect them together, try and make these little spots so we can try and connect things. The students there worked so hard in a year to create, it's almost like a teeny tiny nature reserve in its own right. It's just beautiful and so accessible, which is what it was all about.
Right, okay. That's really interesting, because it was, when I visited, it was a little bit earlier in the year, and everything was just sort of starting to flourish.
It was beautiful,
and
wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a lot of life there. Considering it was a bit of concrete tacked onto a concrete building in the middle of a town with a trunk road running past the end of
Absolutely.
it, and ambulances screaming by. It was full of life. So, I mean, could you tell me what are some of the biggest challenges that wildlife faces in the urban environment, and how can communities help overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so absolutely. So like I said, we do have green spaces in urban areas. We have parks and we have small green spaces. But if those are isolated and wildlife can't move from one green space to another, you restrict it so much. So our project is designed to fill in the gaps if possible. So we're looking for places that can provide shelter and food for wildlife in amongst all the built-up concrete. Now, this might be a curb, this might be a small hedgerow, anything where animals and mini beasts can move through the city without having to come in contact with concrete or cars or people, really. And I think as you walk through the city, you kind of start seeing all these little green spaces that we could join up together. And that is our biggest challenge, is to find the spaces and try and create those corridors. I think when Dom talked about connectivity, we're talking about that too, in terms of not only connectivity between the spaces, but connectivity between people and wildlife and green spaces. We know there's been so much research done. We know the importance of being out in wild areas. We know the importance of green space on all of our mental health and well-being. We just need to find those spaces that people can access as easily as possible. And not just walking through, but being involved with. So planting things or caring for things, or sometimes just stopping and listening to the birds or watching the butterflies. Being part of what's out there is really important for all of us.
Yeah, very much like being sat on the bench in the garden at Smite at the moment.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little bit chilly and it's a little bit overcast and grey, but it is quite nice being out in the environment with everything going on around us. So just sort of returning back to the Heart of Worcester project, how has that helped nature in the city itself?
So we've had a lot of birds visiting the site. We have had we've had bees and butterflies. There hasn't been a huge amount of flowers this year, but they are there, and the bees and butterflies are turning up. They are arriving, which is what it's all about. Quite often you hear people say, if you plant it, they will come, or if you make it, they will come. Deadwood piles, a little tiny pond, things do turn up once you've put them there for them to find, if you like. So we've created that little space at Heart of Worcester, and we're hoping that more people will see that. At the end of the project, a lot of students and a lot of staff at the college wanted to come and use the space to teach in and to learn in, which was the best thing for me. That was the most exciting part about all of this, is the enthusiasm from other students saying, why can't I do this? Why can't I be involved in this project? And that's really what it's all about, because these are the future. You know, these are college-age students. They're going to be coming into jobs that maybe work in the environment, in conservation, and we need them to be looking after these spaces and campaigning to make us all more aware.
Right, yeah. It's quite interesting, because I spent a bit of time this morning actually with some volunteers, and basically their motivation was about protecting nature, and it was about them getting out in that space, but also they were saying that, as a lot of them are retired folk, they were saying that actually it's going to be really nice to take those skills and pass them on to younger people. Yeah. And one lady was telling me about her grandchildren and how she was taking her grandchildren out, and they were doing what she was doing through her volunteering with the grandchildren and passing that seed on, if you like, for the next generation. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. So sort of think about things in a sort of a slightly bigger picture. How do urban green spaces, like gardens or parks or roadside verges, what role do they play in supporting biodiversity?
Well, we can create lots of different areas, can't we, in all these different spaces. If everybody in the street had a window box with flowers in, you'd have a whole row of flowers that pollinators could use. You could make spaces for deadwood in parks where we don't normally, because we tend to be a bit tidy in parks. So maybe some of the parks are doing this, where they're leaving areas to go wild, leaving deadwood piles for insects to live in. So we're kind of hoping that everyone can do their little bit, especially in gardens. Gardens are fantastic. There is a lot of gardens in cities and towns, as we know. If everybody in all those gardens did a little bit each to help wildlife, we'd have this huge space for nature to thrive in, really, and equally so would we.
So you're saying sort of small things that we can do in gardens. What kind of everyday actions could people take to make the neighbourhoods perhaps more wildlife friendly?
So there is lots of things, and at this time of year we're sat in the garden in autumn, so the trees are losing their leaves and a lot of flowers have died, but sometimes you don't always need to tidy up. We've got this thing in this country, I think, where we like to tidy up in autumn, and if you can leave some of the leaves on the ground, they'll rot down and make beautiful soil next year. If you can leave some of those open sticks just standing up, they'll provide a little home for something to live in through the winter months. So maybe don't be as tidy. That's one piece of advice. And if you think about different seasons, we have, you've probably heard of it, No Mow May, where you perhaps don't mow your lawn for a month or maybe even 2, and then you'll have more flowers in your garden.
Yeah,
so
I know that from I didn't mow my lawn. I think I've mowed my lawn 4 times this year.
Yeah.
Because of the drought, it was just, I'm just going to leave it.
To leave it.
And there was just little tufts of grass here, there and everywhere. And even though it was all fairly dry, the wildlife, the insects, was unbelievable. So I said to my wife, that's something we're going to do now. We're going to leave patches of the lawn unmowed all year round.
Perfect. And that's what we need. We don't need to have all of it. We all like a little patch of mown lawn to sit in. You put your chairs and tables, have a picnic, have some family round, fantastic. But yeah, if you can leave the edges all wild, it does make a difference, definitely.
And I mean, things like bug hotels.
Bug hotels are great, especially if you've got children that you want to entertain for a while. You can make a bug hotel with them, and then going forward they can look for bugs in the bug hotel. So it's a win-win, really, for everybody.
Yeah, I built one myself, just using some scrap pieces of pallet wood that I had, and just bits of pipe and bits of bamboo and all sorts. And it was a lot of fun to do, and I put that up, and underneath it I put a solid block of wood and just drilled different sized holes in the solid block of wood. That was a support for a pallet as well. I think it's a hardwood by the feel of it. Yeah. Because it burned one of the drill bits out while I was drilling it.
That's definitely a hardwood.
Definitely a hardwood. And then I actually screwed that onto just a wooden fence post.
Oh,
and
lovely.
And it's, I mean, they're definitely solitary bees using it because a couple of the holes were blocked up.
I think we have got carried away with honeybees and forgotten that solitary bees also need spaces, and actually they are fairly used to provide spaces for anywhere that's hollow they can get inside and lay their eggs and then cover up the front is great.
And just sort of thinking about sort of wetland areas as well in gardens. Is there anything we can do with that? You know,
I think if you're living in an area where your garden is wet, then you have to just embrace that. You have to go with the fact that it is wet, and you need to buy plants that will live in those damper conditions, and make sure that you're not trying to grow lavender and rosemary that like to live in the hot countries. You need to be thinking about what plants to put in, what shrubs to put in. Even make use of the fact it's a wetland and make a pond in there somewhere, because you've already got it wet. You might as well make the most of it. Maybe you need a pond liner, or just dig a hole and see what happens. See if it fills up and it goes back down. That's absolutely fine. It's all good habitat in your garden. That you can embrace rather than trying to fight.
So you basically, I mean, you could get away with a scrape in a garden.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, just scrape the top off and see what goes on.
What goes on? Okay.
And sometimes all of us are experimenting with different things, because climate is changing so rapidly and so quickly that we're all experimenting now. So the dry seasons that we had this year, tree planting was done in sort of February, and then suddenly it didn't rain for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's a very stressful time for all of us, for the plants and for us, because we weren't sure what was going to happen. So now we need to look and say, okay, well, which trees survived? Which ones did manage that drought, and which ones really didn't go well? Because that will help us going forward with what's happening around us.
I mean, one of the things that I picked up on a couple of weeks ago was the Trust sell seed bombs.
Yes.
Which I thought was great. I mean, it was... And I bought some and I put some in, and actually the Wildlife Trust sent me some wild seeds as well in a packet.
Yes, yeah.
And I planted those probably beginning of August.
Yeah. And
I wasn't really expecting anything, and I got a pot full of herbs.
Yeah.
and they were flowering quite late.
Yes.
So all the bees and the insects were buzzing around all the late flowering herbs.
Put in.
And then they've all started dying off now, so I've harvested them, chopped them up, dried them.
Yay!
And I've got basil and...
You've got your cooking pot ready.
Got my cooking pot ready. So there's a lot of benefits as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
To
Exactly.
having not just an urban garden, but something that's good for you as well as the wildlife.
And I think we all like flowers. Everyone likes to look at flowers. And so if you can create a space in your garden where you've got flowers from spring all the way through summer and to late autumn straight winter, that's brilliant for everyone, isn't it? We like to see it, and the insects will really love you for it.
Yeah. Just walking down the Worcester to Birmingham Canal. I've left Fort Royal behind me, and as I'm walking down, it's a man-made waterway. It was put in for Royal Worcester Porcelain so that they could distribute their goods around the world. The roads at the time were terrible, and they experienced a lot of breakages, and obviously that was hitting profits. So the canal was put in place in order to help with the industrialisation of Worcester, and it's no great surprise that the canal connected to natural waterways like the River Severn. And the environment is very, very urban. It's a brick and concrete environment, but even along here there are patches of green, there are patches of scrub. I've just walked down, I've just seen a gentleman feeding some cygnets, some late cygnets. There's 3, and I've just come under the bridge, and there's another 3 cygnets that are also there being fed. And the environment is, you'd think, not a great environment for wildlife, but it's a natural wetland corridor going through, and it joins into the river, so that provides movement for aquatic life. But also there's a lot of scrub along the side of the bank, lots of bushes, and I've just stopped because there's a block of flats just on my left hand side, and the owner of one of the flats has got a ground floor balcony basically that's just looking out, and they've screwed a bug hotel to the wall. So it's just little things like that, and it all harps back to connectivity. Now, if you listened to the first podcast, Green Farm, I talked to Dom and Laura about connectivity in the rural landscape. Well, expanding on that a little bit, and when it's within the neighbourhood, within the urban environment, it's about creating little patches of green and environments for wildlife to pass through and hopefully spread out across the environment. Well, it's been really interesting to walk along the canal side and see some of the things that people are doing to help nature thrive along this watery corridor through the middle of the city. I'm going to head on down the Riverside Path now, and I'm going to go to the Heart of Worcestershire College, where I'm going to meet back up with Julie.
And if I take you for a quick walk round, in front of me I've got a little bit of a woodland going on. So we have got some hazel, some silver birch, a rowan, hawthorn, holly. Some of those have been planted since we've got here. So underneath those we've got woodland plants such as bluebells, snowdrops, foxgloves. We've got some valerian and some buttercups. So that's all doing really well, coming on nicely. And amongst that we've got some deadwood piles and some ferns. And then just next to that we've got this potentially the smallest pond, which is a little bucket that's got water in it and is doing incredibly well. Lots of flowers on there. And then next to that we've started a kind of a mix of vegetables and flowers. So we've got flowers for pollinators, which will encourage them into the garden, and then the vegetables that we can use, we've got beans and tomatoes, and some lemon balm, some chives. So we've got a mixture of those things. The problem with this garden is the majority of it is in the shade all the time. So the little tiny strip of sunlight that we get each day has all the flowering plants and the vegetables in it. Particularly doing well is our rhubarb, as it happens. And then in the middle of the area, we've got a compound of sunflowers, which is basically all the sunflowers are together in one space. And we're hoping that they will encourage each other to grow up as they get to the sunshine. And then we'll have some nice big flowers next year, and we can use the seeds to feed the birds, because we have a bird feeding station as well. And then in the corner, in the darkest, wettest, dampest corner, we've got a mini beast hotel. And in there, we're hoping we'll have woodlice, centipedes, millipedes, spiders. And on the other side, opposite that, we've got places for bugs, such as the solitary bees. So we've created bee homes and mini beast homes. We have got a bird box, and that's about to go up soon. We made the bird box a couple of weeks ago, and that's going to be put up by some of the staff, so that we can have a whole complete set of habitats in one very small, very urban space. So my role here in the garden is, at the beginning, this was a very dark, dismal place to be. So we looked at where are the darkest, dampest areas, where is the lightest area, what might we be able to put in those areas, what plants will live in shade, what plants need the light. And then we had a map, and the students put on the map what plants they thought would go in which areas, so they'd be able to thrive. So hence the design of the garden is based around light, which is a bit like in a woodland. You get in the middle of the woodland, it's very dark. On the edge of the woodland, it's a lot lighter. So we've kind of looked at it in that way. The building is creating the shade, so that's like the middle of our forest, if you like. And then the edge of the garden is where we get our sunlight. So my job was to support them in that, to give them some information that they could use to make their decisions. Then I've been coming about once a fortnight through the year, so it's been a whole academic year of students. There's been 3 main groups of students that have worked in the garden, which means nearly all of them have had an opportunity to have a turn in this garden, which has meant that we've reached probably about 40 students during the year that I've been here. Going forward, the idea is that they will now look after this garden for themselves, because they don't need me anymore. I am redundant. And we are hoping to do a community project with the same students somewhere else in Worcester. So they'll come from the college, they'll walk to a different site, and we will create another garden like this one in a different site, which would be fantastic for them to see how much they've developed and how they can take this skill to a different place.
My name is Jo. I am a lecturer in the base in Heart of Worcestershire College. This is a SEN base, so we are teaching students with different types of neurodiversity, and we have contacted Worcestershire Wildlife Trust to get some help with our outdoor area, which used to be part of a nursery, but it was really unkept. It didn't look very good. Looked quite awful actually. Didn't have any plants in it. Was very dark and horrible and uninviting. So we have decided together with our students that we are going to transform it into sensory garden with some wildlife in it. And so a staff member contacted the Wildlife Trust, and that's how we got to know Julie, who is basically leading on this project. So I'm the teacher responsible for the project for the time being, and I worked with Julie and different students. So the students worked on like rotational basis for a few weeks at the time. So we were trying to give as many students as possible a chance to work in this garden, to see it being developed. So we started with clearing this garden and got to the point where we have actually managed to have like a little wildlife forest area and also just a garden area with different types of plants. We have secured a couple of grants, and we were able to buy plants and equipment and a greenhouse. We also have donations from staff members, like that pergola there, and the objective for us is basically to transform this horrible area into a nice area for our students. We are hoping for this area to be a place for our students to be able to have some lessons outside, learn about nature, learn some skills to do with gardening, spend time outside, and to help our students to learn skills. And there's loads of skills that our students were able to develop, and they have enjoyed it. And we have seen many happy students taking part in all those projects, learning new skills, and being quite proud of what we have achieved.
Well, it was great to hear from both Julie and Jo, and I also took time to have a little chat with a couple of the students to find out about their viewpoint of conservation in an urban environment.
I like helping nature by giving bugs some space to live and giving them water, giving them food. Like for bees, I like planting flowers so they can get pollen, so we can make honey and they can digest stuff. And for worms, I just like making the soil nice and wet and soft so they could eat. My favourite thing I've been doing in the garden is the painting. So me and one of my friends were sketching a picture of a bumblebee or and a ladybug, and we painted both of them really well. And turns out I'm actually really good at art.
I think it's nice to do a bit for the wildlife and just helping out in the community. I mainly like to do planting, just watching the plants grow and just doing my bit. I feel relaxed, calm, mainly happy knowing that I'm doing a good thing for the world we live in. I've learned that they can be quite delicate, so it's best not to disturb them or ruin where they live, and just let them keep them to themselves.
I like keeping the animals safe in their habitats. Like making those pictures with animals on them. Make animals feel safer in the garden. Like keeping animals in habitats where they like to live. And when their house is gone, they get more houses to be in, habitats.
Well, I really like helping nature because I'm a really big fan of how nature feels and looks, because it helps me feel calm and relaxed whenever I'm in a stressful situation, like with an argument or just an exam or something. So I'd go outside and try and calm down with all the plants, do some watering, plant some new plants on the ground in some pots, and it really helps. I think my favourite thing I've done is building a little greenhouse that holds loads of plants with loads of trays that holds around 6 or 7 each in each row. I built it using, of course, wooden walls, some see-through glass, used an Allen key to screw in some bolts and screws. Caused a lot of wrist pain. I learned that some animals prefer to live in bug hotels, which attracts them way more. So to help with the garden, like pollination, or maybe just to make the garden more nice. And I'd also learned that some plants are a lot more delicate and definitely need a lot more attention than other ones, which is definitely required to keep them alive and healthy. What I would suggest is whenever you have the time, I would recommend planting more plants in areas that don't seem very green like there's no trees or flowers. Yeah, I'd recommend planting some more of them And also, if you see any spaces that are either dehydrated or look like it's dying, I would recommend giving it a little water if you have some spare time.
Well, it was great to hear from Julie, Joe and the students at Heart of Worcestershire College. And now I'm going to take you over to my garden and we'll have a little explore. I'm now finding my way around my garden. I'm actually on my patio at the moment, and I've made a few changes to the way that I garden. On my patio at the moment, I've got some Mexican fleabane that I planted down the edges. It's a concrete slabbed patio, but I left the edges away from a retaining wall and put some gravel in, and I've since changed that and planted up Mexican fleabane, which looks fabulous when it's in flower. And around the edge of the patio, I've got a number of pots and tubs, and I've planted those up with herbs. I've got some basil, I've got fennel, and I've allowed all of those things to grow and to flower. And I've also had a number of different flowers and plants, sunflowers in the garden, and I've got other herbs as well. I've got some thyme, I've got some mint, and basically as I come through the back garden, I'm coming up. It's on 2 different levels. I've got a bird bath which is sort of just up on the second level, and that sits underneath a tree. And the tree, well, it's basically a shrub, and there's a holly tree. I've got a small piece of rhododendron, which I quite like it for the flowers, but I've kept it small and I've kept it under control. But underneath the sort of bushes, I've cleared a space so we can get natural light in. But above, we've allowed the trees to really bush up, and within that, we've had lots of nesting birds this year. There have been sparrows, pigeons. Earlier in the year, we had a sparrowhawk in the garden, sat upon the shed roof, and we've also had tits and all sorts of bird life in the garden itself. And then as I come up onto it, sort of the top level, I've got a lawn area, and basically at the start of the year I gave it a quick mow when it was still fairly green and fresh, and then I allowed it to grow. And with the drought that we've had this year, the ground was severely cracked, so I didn't mow it at all, and I've left it, and it's probably about 6 to 8 inches tall at the moment, and I'm just going to leave it now for the winter. I've also got like a small log store to the side of the shed, and what I've done is underneath that I've put in lots of pieces of bamboo and different sections of wood and things to create a bit of a bug hotel under the wood store. And as I sort of walk on up the garden, on my right hand side I've got some fruit trees. I've got a couple of apple trees, and I've also got a plum tree. And what I've decided to do this year is to leave the windfall on the ground, and allow that, nature to take its course. I've still got hundreds and hundreds of apples. I've still got a few left on the tree at the moment as well, which I'm going to leave. But the fruit trees have been fabulous. They've been good for us, but they're also a great source of food for the wildlife. And then I come up to the top of my garden. I've got a sort of small decked patio area, and I've got quite a sizable sort of summer house shed. And at the back, what I've done is I've left a corridor down the back of the shed, and I've got a hedgehog gateway between my neighbour's garden and my other neighbour's garden. I'm sandwiched in the middle between 2 houses, and we've allowed hedgehogs to come through. But because it's at the back of the shed, and because it runs past the back of my greenhouse as well, and it's a vegetable garden area with raised beds, it means that the 2 dogs that I've got can't really get access to the wildlife, so they're able to wander in and out of the garden freely. As well as that, I've got a number of bird feeders hanging up and around the garden as well, and we'll keep those stocked up all through the winter. And then I come into my vegetable garden area, and I've got some fruit trees, as I've already mentioned, and I've got some currant bushes. And the currant bushes, we allowed them this year. We didn't actually harvest any of the currants, we just left them for the birds, and the birds have been happily helping themselves. And it's particularly good at a time of year when we've had the drought as well. There's not been as much food about, so it gave extra food for the local wildlife. In the garden I get a lot of foxes. I had a family of foxes. It was a vixen and 2 cubs in the garden earlier on this year. And just up where I've got the hedgehog highway running through the back of the garden, I've got 3 compost bins, the big sort of tall black plastic ones. 2 of them I use, and I rotate my compost between them, and then I use the compost in the garden, but 1 I leave alone. And the reason I do that is I've taken the sort of slidey bottom bit off where you get access to the compost, and I've left that open. And what we found is, and there's signs of it here, that hedgehogs are finding their way in there. So we've left that, but also, I mean, there won't be anything in there now, but if I open up the lid and look inside, on warmer days I can look down in, and there's often slow worms just sitting on the top. So, you know, I'm very, very lucky in that respect. And my garden has become a bit of a wildlife garden, but it's not unkept. And it's just little things that you can do like that that will really, really help the wildlife. Now, it's I regard my garden as a green corridor, and it allows wildlife to pass through. Some of my neighbours much prefer a tightly preened garden, and of course that's, you know, everybody's tastes. But I think it's important that we have odd gardens like mine that just become a great place for nature. And just not too far away, literally about 100 metres away from where I live, there is currently some wasteland. It's like a ransom strip, and that's full of trees, and I think the foxes have got their den over there. And so my garden is a stepping stone between that and the scrubland, and also other gardens around the little close that I live in, where the wildlife can just move around freely. And you do reap the rewards for having all of this wildlife. I love sitting in my kitchen and looking out of a night time. I've had bats flying around when I've been sat out here. This year has been tremendous for butterflies and hawk moths. So there's so much going on in your green space, in your own little patch of garden. And if we do a few little things like not mowing and just putting up bird feeders and providing a bit of cover and a bit of habitat and a little bit of food, they'll come. And they always say that, build it and they will come. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Wild Worcestershire. We've started off in Fort Royal Hill Park. We followed a man-made corridor down the Worcester to Birmingham Canal, and we've seen some of the wildlife that was down there. And we've eventually come out onto the River Severn, which is in itself is a natural corridor through the heart of the city. We've been to the Heart of Worcestershire College and seen the work of the young people there that have built a wildlife garden in what would ordinarily be a concrete square. And finally we've come back and we've ended up in my garden, and I've described the sorts of things that you can do to help nature. So coming up on the next episode, we are going to be looking at volunteers within Worcestershire Wildlife Trust and a really, really important role that they play in all the activities, whether it be office-based or whether it be out in the field. We couldn't operate without them, and we couldn't achieve the things that we achieve. So we're going to delve in depth into that, and we're going to talk to volunteers in lots of different roles about the types of things that they do and why they do it. And that'll be coming up next month. So until then, I hope you have a lovely month, and I will catch you on the next one. So from me, goodbye.